I think we're live, David.
Welcome, Game of Thrones fans, to Essos2Westeros Season 4 finale discussion and analysis. Alongside my broadcast partner from sunny Florida, Josh Miller, I'm Dave Leno from the Northeast. Great to have you with us as we explore and dive into the intricacies that is Game of Thrones Season 4 episode The Children. Josh Miller, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, David. How are you?
Good. Well, yesterday, the season 4 finale aired. The episode was called The Children, and it came off of a spectacular episode in itself, At the Wall, which is usually that episode 9 that's always thrilling, and Neil Marshall came in to direct that one like he directed Blackwater. First off, I want to start with 9 going into 10, the finale. When you saw episode 9 and that whole battle at the wall, are you thinking to yourself at that time, how can this finale top that episode? Or do you feel the whole way that the finale was going to be much better than the episode 9 fight at the wall with the wildlings?
Well, I hoped episode 9 would be better than the wildling fight at the wall, because the wildling fight at the wall I didn't think was that good. The fight itself was good, but it ended on a denouement, if you will. It didn't really have a big splash. Now, starting off the finale, episode 10, The Children, you had Stannis come in and save the day, and I thought that would have been a much better ending.
So let's start there,
9.
because you and I talked about how they would start the finale, and I said for continuity reasons that they would probably start with the screen going to white at the end of episode 9, that episode 10 would probably start at the wall, and it did, with Jon Snow going out. I think I predicted that with you, and I agree. As soon as he got out there, and then he made it out on his own, the wildlings took him. Really didn't take him captive, kind of let him walk towards Mance Rayder, King Beyond the Wall, and that whole scenario played out with Stannis coming with the music was pumping. I thought that was great. I was actually cheering. I was like, yeah, this is a good start to the finale. Different from the books, though, for those that didn't read the books, Snow actually does get captured and put into a cage. That did not take place here, I think, for just time reasons and to kind of rush it out there. And when Stannis came in, they kind of, instead of 300 pages in a book, they kind of just fast forward in the show. Were you okay with how that played out and Stannis quickly got Mance prisoner and killed all the other people, or do you feel that was rushed at the beginning?
Both. It played out well, but at the same time, it was rushed from a couple ways. It was rushed in terms of it happened right at the beginning, and there was almost no, like, John Lee. If you think about it as just a whole, if you're binging the series and you're watching it back to back to back, episode 9 ends with John leaving, and the wall is still in chaos. He says, this is basically, we only survived one night, and we're going to keep, there's going to be more people coming. So John goes out, goes to Mance Rayder, talks with him. It seems like almost no time has passed, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Stannis comes and saves the day. That's the first problem. Second problem I had, and I enjoyed it. I'm not, crashing it. I'm just kind of nitpicking. But the second problem I had was there wasn't any really build-up to Stannis. I think the show was trying to keep the whole thing a surprise that because if they alluded to Stannis coming to save the day, well, it would have been a shock that he arrived. But they wanted to make it a shock. But because they wanted to make it a shock, they had to sacrifice a little bit of logic. At the end of season 2, he looks into the fire. He sees something. I think at the beginning of season 3, or at the end of season 2, I forget, whatever, he decides that, okay, the real problem is the wall. We need to go to the wall to save, or maybe it's season 3 sometime.
Which they plugged in the preview to this episode.
Right, they plugged in the previously on, but they didn't do it the whole season.
Correct.
The whole season. So if you think about it logically, some point in season 3, the beginning of season 3, he goes, the real fight is at the wall. We need to go to the wall. And then for the entire season 4, he's not talking about going to the wall. I don't even think this entire season there's been one mention of going to the wall. it's all about him reclaiming his birthright and him becoming the true king of Westeros, him going to Bravos. But there really hasn't been any indication that he's going to the Wall. I like Stannis. I like him. I like Sir Davos. I like Melisandre. So I was glad to see them. It was a bit of a surprise, but it has its ups and downs.
I thought that they did try to hide it very well, and probably consciously on behalf of the producers of the show, that he was going to be the surprise savior at the Wall. I think many that didn't read the books would probably feel that he wasn't coming and there was going to be just more blood and gory and all that war stuff at the Wall the next day with the wildlings, which Jon Snow and Samwell Tarly and others were referring to, Alistair Thorne among them. That did not need to happen, of course, with Stannis coming. And I thought it was great seeing that. I love the wide shot, which was obviously CGI'd or whatever you want to call it, with the host of Stannis's army coming from a few different sides of the forest beyond the Wall. I thought that was really cool, and I thought just how that scene played out, I thought it was well done. I really did. I thought it was a big start, and I'm okay with Snow, like I said before, not being in a cage or held captive. I think for time reasons, I thought it was fine. I thought it was realistic enough. Now, going from that and seeing Stannis adapt to the Castle Black customs of burning the bodies because you don't want them to turn into White Walkers, so that was kind of fast forward a lot, which in the books goes into a lot more detail from what I understand after reading Storm of Swords, the third book in the series, which was definitely the best book.
Right.
So I'm okay with how that played out. I thought that was really good. The next few scenes involving Cersei and Tywin, and then her going to Jaime, kind of thought they were unnecessary, but I think, like I spoke to you, I thought that the writers were trying to set up maybe the downfall to Tywin, that, hey, Cersei always had Tywin's back, but now you're seeing the decline of this monster, this leader in Tywin Lannister, when Cersei is questioning his motives, especially, and the reason is about her being wed to Loras Tyrell to merge the families again. She didn't want that. She obviously wanted to be with her brother of incest, Jaime Lannister, and I think that was the sole reason why that was put in. Did I need to see her go and kind of do it with Jaime? No, but I guess they just did it again for continuity reasons to go back to back in the scenes. But besides that, that was probably one of the weaker parts of the show for me. But I understand that you got to break it up at some point. You can't have all, fast scenes that I love. You know me, when I go to movies, I tell you all the time I love nonstop action. I don't like the slow stuff. But
yeah, well, if I can jump in, going back to the Wall, I agree. The CGI with Stannis was great.
That has to cost a lot of money, right? I don't know if you've looked at
actually.
Or not.
Okay. No, it does cost a lot of money, but there's actually one scene we're not at yet, and I wonder if you can guess it. There's one scene that I read an article today that was the most expensive scene ever done on Game of Thrones, was in this episode. I wonder if you can guess it, if you want to take a guess. But it wasn't that scene, but there was one scene that was the most expensive episode ever in Game of Thrones that was in this episode. I'm sure that costs a lot of money, but also they're getting used to it. And actually, I was laughing a little bit when I saw this scene with Stannis coming in, because I remember in Season 1, there's a battle that happened, not a battle, there's a fight, a skirmish that happens between Ned and Jaime in King's Landing, and it's the one where Ned, gets the spear in his leg. And it's funny because I remember listening to a thing the producers said, and they said, well, really the whole thing happens on horses, but we weren't able to do it because we didn't have the money. And I was laughing because that whole scene with Stannis was on horses, and thinking to myself, if they only knew 3 years from now, we'd have so much more money because the show's gotten so much more popular. It was kind of funny, I thought.
On that note of popularity, you quoted 7.1 million watched it live at 9.
Yeah.
Which was still behind the Mockingbird episode?
Yeah. Mockingbird, I think, was 8. Well, I'm not sure if it was in 9 or the 9 and 11 showing, or 9 in the 10-15 showing.
All right, well, wait, before we jump all around the bush. Okay, so you know the most expensive
Yes.
scene that was shot?
Yeah. You want to say guess?
I'll take a guess.
Say guess.
I'm not
Think
gonna
of,
say. I'm not.
think of CGI. That's all I'm going to say. The CGI. Think
I'm
about it.
not gonna say the Blackwater explosion.
No. The most expensive scene was shot in this episode.
It was in this episode.
This episode was the most expensive scene they've done on Game of Thrones. In this episode, the children. The finale.
Yeah, was it the war with the skeletons?
Yes, that was it. Very good.
It almost looked like a video game, if you will.
Yeah, it was very. I don't know if it was very.
Did you like it?
I liked it at the time because there was a lot of action to it, and I thought it really kept the pace going, and especially with Bran, because Bran's had a very
bland storyline.
Bland is a good word. He's had a very bland storyline. It's been a storyline. It hasn't been so much of a storyline, and more of he's at point A. We need to get him to go to point B.
Right.
And that's kind of not really that interesting. So to throw that in there was really good. At first, I didn't think they were White Walkers. I guess they're whites, people who the White Walkers infected. I did like that scene with Bran. I thought it was exciting, even though looking back on it, the CGI was. I know they said it's expensive, but the whites were very generic, out of a video game. That one scene transcends everything the series has done so far. Because thus far, the series, even though it's a fantasy series, it's pretty been based in reality. I mean, there's been some magic here, like the Shadow Baby, and obviously the White Walkers are, magic. But it's been pretty contained to reality. Skeletons popping out of the ground, and then trying to run to the cave and shattering because there's some imaginary force field. That really goes into the fantasy elements, which was interesting. I think that's an interesting move they decided to make. So we'll see how that pays off.
I still don't know, because I read the book a while ago, if those skeletons were in the book outside of the weirwood tree.
Right.
Did you look that up at all and see if they are?
Yeah, I did. So I looked it up, and I believe, and you can probably answer this better than I can for sure. But yeah, basically they are whites. They're not the White Walkers. They're the whites. They're the people who've died, and I guess they've decayed to the point where they're now Walking Dead zombies. And basically they're whites. And this actually happens in book 4 or book 5, I'm not sure, but it does not happen in A Storm of Swords.
Right.
It happens in the next book. So that does happen, and the children, which is named after, is actually the children of the forest, who are the people who basically saved Bran. And also, I forgot to say that the children who threw the fire out of their hands, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That was very. Again, that goes into the elements where it's no longer a series based on reality. That's almost total fantasy. People who can throw like fireballs out of their hands and destroy these things. So it was interesting. I don't know if I like the CGI in that scene. It just, I don't know. It was fun. It was fun watching it at the time, but looking back on it, I think what makes the series so great is it's kind of based in reality. It doesn't have this fantastical element to it. Or it has a little bit of it, but not that much. And this was the first big step into that element. So we'll see where it goes. But it was an interesting scene.
I was thankful for that Bran's had some action. His whole crew finally got into a sort of a quarrel like they had at the Craster's Keep with the
mutiny, or the Jon Snow.
The second mutiny, and Snow and everybody coming over.
Right.
To kill all those
Rasts and friends.
Yes, exactly. So it was nice to see that build off of that one particular scene. Now, in the books, it goes into detail about this weirwood tree and him climbing down all the way into what seemingly was, I think, the core of the earth. Obviously, you can't do that in the show, but I like the guy who's like the three-eyed raven, the old guy. It was kind of what I expected. I don't know what you were expecting, who you would see.
So
Even
the
though,
three-eyed raven, I'm sorry to interrupt. The three-eyed raven is an actual man. Is that what you're saying?
yes, that sees everybody.
So what is the raven itself is just like the physical
An
raven.
extension of him.
Okay. Right. So he can like warg like Bran can do?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that's correct, and he's like, he's the lead, and I don't think they die. Now, why is he old, and why are the children children? Maybe he can die. I don't know.
Well, they said that they were there before the first men. So obviously they're an old ancient group, and obviously they have old ancient powers.
Right.
So no, I'm just saying. You said they can't die. I mean, that's probably either true or they live to be very old ages.
True. I thought that was well done. I really liked the skeleton stuff. Added some flair, some fireworks, if you will. And
Right. It
I
was
thought,
exciting.
and especially with what's his name dying, Jojen.
What'd you think of Jojen dying?
Thought it was good because it shows that nobody is invincible, and they were okay to kill off a kid in the show, like which they've done before, obviously. But
So
I
you think
thought,
Jojen dying was good?
yeah, I thought. Or why are you upset that he died? I mean,
Uh, I'm not upset that he died, but I think I disagree with everything literally every single thing you just said. You just said,
because
because I'm going to explain. You said that, it shows that the show's willing to kill off characters. I mean, come on. They've killed off a lot of people at this point. There aren't many people we can hold on to. And the idea that the show's unpredictable can kill people, well, when you start killing everyone, the show can get predictable because when you kill everyone, you can just predict that at one point everyone is going to die. Also, Jojen didn't. I mean, again, I didn't read the book, but maybe he's more of a character in the book. But in the show, he wasn't really a character. He was a plot device. I mean, literally, he appeared out of nowhere in the beginning of season 3 and said, "Bran, we need to get you from literally point A where we were to point B, which is
right.
here." I mean, Jojen is a plot device to get from point A to point B, and his plot's over. He did his job. He got from point A to point B, and
Yep.
he died. And I think, well, oh, go ahead.
Why do you want him still alive?
No, I don't want him still alive. I don't care. The problem is he's a plot device. I didn't care if he lived or died.
Right.
He had no weight on me. And
And
actually, this is the one thing that I don't say worried about, but someone like Mira Reed, his sister, who lived and she went into the cave. I don't know what happens in the book to her, but she never seemed to have a point ever other than basically taking care of her brother. Now, maybe she'll
right.
change and they'll grow her character in the next season. That's fine. But I'm also worried that they could just think to themselves in season 4, you know what? She's dead weight. We need to kill off some characters. She's perfect fodder to go, which is what a lot of shows do. They figure out the characters who they don't really need. They say, okay, you're fodder. Go. And then, again, it just gets into this point of predictability. I'd rather them keep her alive and make her interesting, but I'm worried that a show like this is just going to say, we need to kill people because that's the kind of show we are. And
Right.
it's so I didn't care if Jojen lived or died because he was just a plot device. I mean, it could have just, for all I could have cared, it could have just been a voice in Bran's head in season 3 telling him he needs to go here, and it would have worked just fine. So Jojen dying, I don't really think it weighs on it. And it's not like Mira was very sad. I'm sure she was sad, but it didn't seem like she was very sad when he died. So
Right. Okay. Well, I know they're secondary characters, but
I wouldn't say
they're
they're
not.
secondary
They're
characters, but
almost. They're almost. Let's put it this way. They're almost meaningless. So.
they are meaningless. They're a plot device.
Right. I agree. It's a good analogy by you. I go with touche. I will say this though, that we talked about this in former episodes. We wish that they cut all the brand scenes and just inserted something else that was more meaningful to that particular episode, whether it was concentrating on Danny in Marine or over there or on that side in Essos or somebody else, or to stay put in King's Landing. Now, this gives some life to Bran's storyline and gets you interested. But we did not hear anything about Rickon and Asha and where they are, which really surprised me. I thought that they would add. I know they don't know where they are, obviously, but I thought maybe, I don't know if we'd see something about them, or maybe hear something through the grapevine through another character. They've seen these two people, but that leaves you wondering where the heck they are. Now,
Oh yeah. Okay.
But going back to my point about the brand stuff, I think as someone who's a fan out there who maybe was like, okay, this is just kind of dry material, that gets you excited about maybe his story moving forward. Which leads me to another story which I think is only going to get even more exciting and more eye-popping and jaw-dropping for fans out there, is the Arya Stark, the illustrious Arya, I call her, the vivacious Arya Stark, who laughs every time someone gets killed because it always happens, unfortunately for her and the Stark family. Her scene with the Hound, I thought, well played, bringing Brienne and Podrick into the mix. And Brienne, I first thought, I will tell you this, as the get-go, and in my mind, Josh, that Arya may not admit who she was. Then it can't, I think, this is in. I think Pod picked out who the Hound was, and then Brienne kind of did and said, "Oh, you're Arya Stark," because I think she knew that the Hound was with Arya. Overall, from the get-go, were you okay with bringing those two parties together and starting that whole fiasco, which ended with Brienne and the Hound going at it?
Yeah, I thought that was wonderful. That was my favorite scene of the whole episode, was Brienne and the Hound. Man, that was great. That might have been. I was trying to think back, like to all the great fight scenes, like the Viper and the Mountain was great, but this definitely, I think that this might be the best fight scene in the entire show, for a lot of reasons.
Even better than the Mountain and the Viper.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. The Mountain and the Viper, we didn't really have anything in, other than Tyrion. We didn't really have anything invested in them. The Mountain, we've seen like 4 times, and
right.
Each time he's played by a different actor. So how much can we invest in him? And the Viper, I mean, yeah, we saw him, but again, we didn't really know him as much as some other characters. I mean, how can you not love Brienne? She's great, and
I love her.
They're both fighting for Arya. They both are fighting for Arya, but they just have different worldviews, and they're just kind of fighting against each other. The Hound was fighting for her to protect her. At one point, he probably wasn't, but now
I think he's a really good actor.
Rory McCann, yeah, and even though the Hound's supposed to be
really good actor, I think she's all right. She plays the part because she looks the part, but
Gwendolyn Christie, the girl who plays Brienne.
I think she's good. Don't worry, I'm a fan of hers, but if you just take a look at the acting and the acting alone, I think the Hound is I think he can shift from being a really bad, kind of scary guy, and then someone that you kind of look at and say, okay, he might seem or look intimidating just in person, but when you really get to know this guy deep down, he actually does have a good heart in him. Acting-wise, not what you think of him as a character. I'm just talking acting on the show.
He's a very good actor. I would never say the Hound has a good heart in him at all. I would say he's had a very rough life that's led to him being the way he is. But I would never say the Hound has a good heart, ever, because I just don't think that's true. But yeah, that scene was absolutely incredible from start to finish. When Brienne first encounters Arya, I was excited for that to see how it was going to play out, because Pod's there also. And then she believes him. Arya believes him. She trusts him, which I think is nice, because a lot of, if you remember when Brienne first met Catelyn saw a lot of Arya in Brienne. That was, I think, one of the first big things. So for these two to meet up, I think is a really nice, I guess, coming full circle in a way. Catelyn's daughter, her actual daughter, and then her metaphorical daughter, Brienne, who she saw Arya in. So that was nice when she met up, and she was getting comfortable with her.
Did you think that Arya was going with Brienne? Now, I know you know what happens next, and we don't want, obviously you saw in the show that she does split ways, but from that time, if you're a non book reader, maybe it goes through your mind that, oh, Arya's going to go run around with Brienne.
Um.
It's hard for you to answer because you know what happens. You know she goes in her own.
Well, yes, but at the same time, I also know that in the books, Jojen Reed is still alive, and I know that they just killed him right before. So I knew they changed things up, and I was like, well, maybe they could have changed this part up. I don't know. But I don't know if I ever thought I wanted to see more of the fight play out. I didn't know if she was going to go with her necessarily, but
Well, okay. So then we get to the fight finally with the Hound and Brienne drawing their swords, which you described as epic, and it wasn't like it was a quick fight scene by all means. We saw them throw punches. We saw them draw their swords at first. We saw, I believe, the Hound fall down a mini cliff, and then Brienne went with them, and they fought in that kind of valley, and Arya and Podrick were watching at least. But some out there, including one Elon Levy, who's listening to this, thanks Elon for putting this in, Elon says, quote, I did not understand why Arya did not help him, being the Hound, by killing the Hound at the end when the Hound was done and Brienne won that fight. Why do you feel that Arya went on her own and just let him sit there to rot? And we really don't know if he died because we don't see it on screen. And what you learned from The Sopranos and what I've ascertained is that if they don't die on screen, still could be out there.
No body, no murder, David.
That's right. That's the quote I was looking for. I set you up for that perfectly.
Thank you. That's a good setup. No,
Were you surprised that Arya didn't help him out at the end?
Was I surprised? No. I realized that we're in a season finale and things need to change, and the dynamic of Arya and the Hound was fun. It was really fun.
Yeah.
But she needed to do something else. So the options were go with Brienne and Pod or go off on her own. And as soon as she heard that Brienne had Lannister gold, no way she was trusting her. Even if she was good-hearted, even if her intentions were true, no way that Arya's going to trust someone with Lannister gold. So that's not the case. So I knew at that point, all right, Arya's going off her own. I didn't know what she was going to do, but that. But in terms of not killing the Hound, I mean, that's pretty cruel.
Right.
And I think the one, I was thinking about this last night, if you think of what she did last night in that episode of not killing the Hound, that's a character arc right there. In other words, what I'm saying is, if you go back to the beginning of season 4, and she was in that position with the Hound, she would have killed him. Season 3, season 2, season 1, she would have killed him at any of those points because her character hadn't developed to that point. And at the end of this episode, she's developed to that point where she, even though she's gotten to know the Hound a little bit better, he's still on her list. And at the end of the day, she wants revenge on him for all the things he's done and all the people who he's harmed, directly or indirectly. And not killing him was worse than killing him. If she killed him, she would have been granting him mercy. By not killing him, she lets him stay there, bleed to death, bleed out. We don't know if he's still alive or dead, but, I want to hope he's still alive, but at the same time, let's say we come back next season, mid-season, end of season, whatever, and he's still alive. I mean, how do you survive that? He had his head bashed in. He had his ear bitten off like Evander Holyfield. He got thrown down a valley. How do you survive that? I'd be interested to see if he's alive. And just a comment on everything, actually. The past 3 episodes, the Mountain and the Viper and the Mountain, Watchers on the Wall, and this episode have been really good on fights. I don't know who the fight choreographer is, but they've been great.
I was going to say, I think that was choreographed really well between Brienne and the Hound. And to my knowledge, I didn't think there were any stunt doubles at all. I don't know if you picked up on anything, but maybe when he tumbled down, that could have been a double.
I'm sure there were doubles, for sure.
Yeah, right, but I thought it was well blocked, and it was one of the better scenes. Which it had that episode, which did it for me. Is like I said from the beginning of this hangout, it had that non-stop action where almost every scene had some sort of war-like tactics going on, which was great. And I thought that ended well, like you said, with Arya's character arc coming full circle, her leaving the Hound of Rot. You know, deep down, she wanted him dead. We don't know if he's dead, but I think many would predict that he is. And she leaves him, and she leaves Brienne and Podrick in the dust. And I think that shows how much Arya has really grown up. I remember, just watching the first season, her being this little girl, always picking a fight with Sansa. And yeah, she had some glimmer of being a knight and pretending she wants to be a boy instead of a girl. And now it's kind of amazing and attests to the actress's role and the job that she's done. It's believable that, hey, this person really can fight. She loves doing it. She can win. And she doesn't take any shit. And I really thought that it transitioned well into the last scene of the show, with her showing the ship's captain the coin and her saying Valor Morghulis, and finally going on the ship. I wish it would have ended differently. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but just finishing up Arya's story in the children episode, I thought that was done. I thought that was done well. I liked seeing her on the ship, and I liked seeing her go to Bravos, which I think in season 5, being that the next book, Feast of Crows, which there were some elements of Feast of Crows in this season, is considered amongst the weakest of the Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire series, books-wise. I think that will keep fans still interested, and it will keep the writers, I think, putting out some really good stuff for Game of Thrones viewers on HBO. So I think her storyline, at least I can say as someone who's read the books, I think many fans will love the way her story will progress. I think that's certain. I think for now that closed the chapter on her in Westeros for the time being. I thought it was a pretty good arc, like you mentioned, with Arya.
Did you like that as the last scene?
No.
Did you like Arya being the? So you didn't like it as the last scene of the season?
No, and I understand why they can't go from, her leaving Brienne and Podrick and the Hound to Rot, and then cut directly to her on the ship, kind of be almost like a jump cut, even though they wouldn't edit a jump cut, which is like almost like an error in editing, but it would portray itself like that if you follow me there. Anybody knows what the editing terminology is. They needed to space that out, which is fine, so they cut to a different scene. I believe, did they go to King's Landing next? Was that the Jaime stuff going in?
Did they cut to Jaime when? After Arya and the Hound fight?
Yes. Or did they go back to the wall?
They didn't go back to the wall.
I think they did cut directly to the Tyrion Jaime scene.
Right, probably.
But I did not, but going back to your point, I did not, as soon as the music started, and the music was playing for a little bit, I was like, I'm hoping for one more thing, which I think all of Twitter was hoping for. I really don't want to spoil that for Thrones fans, but for non-book readers, but I will say this, and Josh, let's be vague as possible. There was one thing that happens at the end of the book that a lot of people were wanting as a payoff, sort of, at the end of this episode. They didn't get it, which you've read a lot of critics about this episode. I think a lot of fans, I can say, felt cheated that they wanted this particular scene to occur on screen. It didn't happen. Again, just for those who haven't read the critics, why did the critics out there feel that maybe this episode didn't deliver in the final moments?
Well, right.
And
Again,
be
I don't
big.
read the book. Right. I don't read the books, but I know what kind of comes, so I'm not going to spoil it or anything. But just in a vague sense, just to steer away from that and go into a much broader topic and bigger topic, is book readers I'm sorry, is book readers and non-book readers. I don't read the books. I do go online though and like kind of spoil myself, which is upsetting for myself, but hey, that's just me. Um, but I think it brings up the bigger discussion of the future of the series because little tiny things are changing, but they're not becoming little and tiny anymore. They're becoming quite large.
Right.
In terms of who dies and how that ripple affects X books down the road, and also George R. R. Martin hasn't finished his sixth book, The Winds of Winter. Think about it now. There's only one more season of books to be done, and then after that,
Old
it's
George
all.
Harry, huh?
It's right. He's got to hurry up, or it's going to be all open season. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss are going to be able to basically ride shotgun over whatever they want to do, and at that point, I think this discussion will become more important because the people who, let's say the book doesn't come out, by that point, people who haven't read the book will be saying, well, what the hell's going on here? Why the F can't we, read the books first? HBO, what are you doing? So I think that'll be more interesting than the fact that they omit this. I've read a few articles. There's one on EW that makes the argument of why the ending was good for this episode, and they hope that what happened in the books doesn't happen in the future. But again, I don't really care about that. What I care about is what the TV show puts out because I'm not going to read the books. So I want the TV show to put out the best product it can. And if the TV show if the producers felt that this ending with Arya going off into the sunset, the children now leading, was the best way to do it, that's great. I think what I've read from the critics saying is the ending that they didn't put in was basically a built-in cliffhanger. It was a built-in, oh my god, OMG moment.
So you don't think they shot that ending that we're talking about at all?
No. I mean, if you read interviews of what I read today, they said, and obviously I don't necessarily believe everything they say in the interviews, but everyone's like, oh, it didn't even come up. We didn't even discuss this thing that happened. It just it never came up. I don't know if I believe that. I can't imagine on the biggest show on HBO right now, things like that don't just come up, but...
Of course they talk about that.
Right. I'm sure it came up, but there was a decision. And, again, I don't really care if they decide to put that piece in or not put that piece in. If they decide to, great. If not, I'm fine either way because I didn't read the book, so...
They better put that piece in next season, though.
Well, let me ask
you, season, right?
If I don't know, if you've read the book and you're telling me it's an important piece...
Yeah, the piece is in. It definitely comes into play, but we've seen this show, Josh, and we've talked about this multiple times. We've seen the show deviate, and you've addressed it with George being old and trying to finish all these books, and he has a couple more.
Well, I don't think he's trying to finish the books. I think he's trying to. This is my conspiracy theory corner.
You think he's trying to?
Right. I think he's trying to string it out for as long as possible, because I think, and this is just pure speculation, but I think he started off and he wrote 3 great books, and this is just what I'm getting from the reviews. He wrote 3 great books, and then he had no idea where to go. He said, oh, crap, what do I do now? I just killed off half of the good characters. Where do I go with just these kids? I mean, I'm not saying he could finish the story great, but I don't necessarily know if he has a great idea for an ending. Maybe he does. I've heard other people say that, no, he has the idea, he knows where he wants to go, but a lot of people say a lot of different things. I think he's just trying to string it out for as long as he can. That way, when he passes away, it'll be this great mystery of, oh, how would he have finished the books, and it'll be talked about for generations. Whereas if he finishes the books, and let's say he finishes the books and it's not a great ending, it will hurt the series for sure.
And there was a big gap between, the second and third book by 6 years? Is that correct? Where was the gap? We talked about that before.
Gap
between...
I'm looking it up now.
Yeah, I thought it was second to third. The third book being Storm of Swords, fourth being Beast of...
I think the times have increased each year, like 2 years, 3 years, 5-year difference. Okay, let's see.
Because I heard that he wanted the Winds of Winter, which is the subsequent next
Right.
book in the
Okay.
series, to come out next year. Go ahead.
So the original book, A Game of Thrones, the first book in the series came out in 1996. The second book came out 2 years later, A Clash of Kings. The third book came out 2 years later, A Storm of Swords. The fourth book, A Feast for Crows, which I assume would be next season, came out 5 years later, 2005. And then A Dance with Dragons, the fifth book, which I guess runs parallel to the fourth book in terms of time, so that'll be next season as well, came out in 2011. So that's 6 years later. And the new book, The Winds of Winter, hasn't come out. That's 2014, so it's 3 years. So literally it was 2, 2, 5, 6 in terms of years. So they've been exponentially getting bigger. They've been getting bigger.
But do you feel like he's pressured now by HBO to
I think
beat
he's
up
more
the pen and paper, if you will?
I don't think he's pressured by HBO because I don't think HBO cares whether or not he finishes the books. HBO is going to move forward regardless. I think he gets a lot of pressure from the fans, obviously, to if he's going to finish, which is probably the most pressure he gets. But I don't think he's pressured by HBO. I think that he's told, from what I'm getting from interviews, he's told them where he wants to go, where he intends the series to go, and they're just going to go. And obviously, I don't have any insight. I don't think many people have any insight into how it's going to work. If the show's going to deviate widely from the book, if they're going to stick to the book, if the show is going to finish and it's going to reveal the ending to the book, or if the endings will be completely different. I don't think many people know, except for probably George and the producers. So we'll see. But no, I don't think HBO is pressuring him. They might be, pushing him along, but I don't think they really care. They're going to move ahead with the series. The series is their thing, and that's what they care about, not the book.
Right.
To be honest, because we talked about this before, the book was obviously popular before the show came on, obviously, because they wouldn't have, been seen by all those people. But it was really the show that brought the book into the spotlight, and that really made it the thing it is. Whereas something like Harry Potter was huge before the movies. Obviously, the movies expanded that universe, but it was really just an expansion, whereas the books were the primary thing. Whereas this, it's the other way around. It's the show is the primary thing, and I think a lot of people see the show and say, oh, wow, I'm going to read the books. Whereas with the Harry Potter was, I read the books, now I'm going to go see the movie.
Do you think this will go down as a series more popular than the Harry Potter books? Or
no.
Okay.
No.
Why?
Why? Well, just from a money reason, I'm pretty sure the Harry Potter book, if you look at just monetary, the Harry Potter series, I'm pretty sure has gone over the $1 billion mark. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's high up there. Game of Thrones isn't. I mean, Harry Potter has its own theme park. It's just opened another one in Orlando, Diagon Alley. I'm not saying Game of Thrones won't have that. Game of Thrones might have a theme park opening in the next X amount of years.
Yeah.
But even then, Game of Thrones...
You don't think there'll be Game of Thrones in Universal 3 years down the line?
It might. It might, it might be that. And I'm sure they'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm not, smacking Game of Thrones, but Harry Potter is so far ahead of anything. I think that I read somewhere that Harry Potter outsold the Bible in Europe, which is the best-selling book of all time. So, to compare Game of Thrones to Harry Potter, that's not fair. They're not even nothing's in the league of Harry Potter. It's
say J.K. Rowling made $1 billion.
Yeah, for sure, and she's just making more, and she's going. I mean, she's producing books under her own synonyms, or not? What's the right pseudonym?
Yeah, that's a word.
Name. No, but is that she's writing books under different names? What's that word? A pseudonym?
A pen name?
A pen name? Okay. So she's writing, and she didn't stop midway through Harry Potter and say, how can I make more money? Let me write these spin-off novels, and I won't write the last novel. Whereas George that's exactly what he's doing. He's saying, well, let me write 30 other books before I come up with the finale for this book.
And we should put in a plug on that note. If you want to be in the Game of Thrones book series, there's a way that you can do it for a small, steep price of $20,000. Josh, tell them more.
Well, I believe George on Prizeo, which is a website where you can donate money to a cause and you'll get a prize in return. George is asking for money for a donation for the some wolf foundation, I believe in New Mexico, I want to say, or Arizona, to help save the wolves there. And you can get many prizes. One including getting yourself killed in the George R. R. Martin series, A Song of Ice and Fire. I believe one, if not both. Actually, I think both of the actual spots for that were taken. One, I think, is a guy who works at Facebook. His name is Goldblatt. He's the Jew in the North, and they're going to kill him off in some upcoming book. I don't know if it's going to be the next book or the last book, but supposedly he's going to die in an upcoming book. And he said in an interview that he wanted to be something of Valerian nature. So who knows what that means, but we'll see. But $20K to get himself killed in a George R. R. Martin book.
Well,
That'll probably be a one-liner.
Just take it out of your pocket right now and dump it on saving those wolves, and you'll be all set and good to go. If you had $20,000 and you wanted to be from a particular part in Westeros or Essos, where would you be and who would you be fighting for?
That's a good question. I'd probably want to be a knight of some sort, just because I think those guys are so cool, and I'd want to be Sir Joshua Miller or whatever. That would be really cool. But I don't know, a knight. Maybe for Daenerys. I'd take out Barristan Selmy and, take his place. Probably that. What about you, David?
I would probably, because I'm a loyal guy, I think I would. I'm always a man of honor and a man of my word, so I would probably go with
like Jaime Lannister.
Yes, but I wouldn't fight for them. It would probably be something with the Starks, trying to get back on.
There are no more Starks.
Well, I would be fighting for the North.
But maybe they describe it more in the book, but there's no more Starks.
Let me clarify. I would probably join either Sansa's company or Arya's company in helping them to safety and getting the Starks back in the fold somehow.
Okay, fair enough.
Now,
I think, yeah.
I want to get to the most, I would say, important scene in the finale, and that was
Hodor.
Well, it was nice to see Hodor, your buddy, kill some people, but that's when Bran had to roll his eyes and change bodies. What do they call that?
Warging. W-A-R-G. Ing.
Right, it's a warg, correct. Like the guy from Beyond the Wall, the wildling who got killed.
Right.
Now, when Jaime goes in to save Tyrion, and as soon as Tyrion goes out and they say goodbye to one another, I'm thinking to myself, all right, here we go. I knew it was at the end. There was about 15 minutes left in the show. But as the whole thing transpires, and I've watched the show or the episode now twice, I'm saying to myself, boy, for such a climactic scene, it was so rushed. I wish they got to it a little bit earlier and lengthened it out a little bit. His escape, and I know in the books that his escape was pretty easy. I don't think nobody had to be killed or anything like that by Jaime in the books, to my recollection. I would have loved to see maybe a little more Varys in that, in those subsequent scenes that followed Jaime freeing Tyrion.
Right.
And I wondered how much it was a shock to people that didn't read the book that Jaime came to save him.
I wasn't surprised that Jaime came to save Tyrion, but I agree with you 100% that the last time we saw Tyrion was the end of episode 8, the Viper and the Mountain, or the Mountain and the Viper. And, obviously he was sentenced to death, so that was a great way to end a cliffhanger. But there was so much else going on in this episode that they didn't really have an opportunity to capitalize on the tension of that. So the next time we see Tyrion, he's being freed. So there wasn't really a lot of tension in this episode about Tyrion dying.
Right.
I agree with you. They could have thrown, instead of maybe that scene in the beginning with Cersei and Tywin, and I know Tyrion got brought up a little bit, and that was that. But instead of having that scene, I think they should have had a scene there that builds up the tension to Tyrion being executed, because there is no tension. And when there's no tension, I never had a fear or worry about Tyrion. So, I mean, I wasn't surprised that he escaped. I don't think he's going to die anytime soon. Maybe in the last book, but, not now. He's the most interesting person on the show, by far.
How did you think him going into Tywin's bedchamber, that played out with seeing the whore Shay straddling the bed without Tywin there?
That was a surprise, because they've never really built to that. I mean, I know that she was
built to Shay being with Tywin.
Right, never built to Shay being with Tywin. I don't know how it plays out in the books, but from the first time we met Shay, even though she was a whore, a prostitute, she always had morals. She was a whore, but she didn't really act like a whore. She acted like someone who wanted to be a proper lady, and pretty much from that moment on, she was with Tyrion. Now, I know obviously they had a falling out this season, and she testified against him, but there's no indication that she ever went to being a straight-out whore and sleeping with all these different people, mainly Tywin. And that's kind of weird for Tywin. I mean, I know we're in a different world.
First time we've seen him with a whore.
Right, first time we've seen him with a whore, but a whore who literally slept with his own son. So,
right.
You know what I'm getting at?
Yes.
So, with Shay, it was a couple problems with Shay. This season, we've only seen her, I think, 3 times or twice. We saw her once in the first episode, the second episode, when she escaped. And then we saw her at the trial, and then we saw her now. Same problem with the Grit is we didn't really see her. So the fact that these 2 women died, a Grit and Shay, and we didn't really see them this season, I never really cared about them. They didn't really have any emotional weight. With Shay, the second thing is she was with Tywin. What? Like, where did that come from? I know she's a whore, but
right.
What? She
led Tyrion to do what he did, and how did you like the way that killing played out with the downfall of Shay the whore?
Right. No, I'm not. No, I like that he killed her. I mean, obviously he's been very emotionally broken with the trial and his father trying to kill him, even though he's been trying to kill him his whole life. So I know that. I think that played out well. I mean, he saw her, his emotions went crazy, he broke as a person, and he was going to kill his father, and he sees her, and you're in my way, I'm going to take you out too. And I think the moment that she called Tywin, even though he was in the room, my lion, something that she's been calling Tyrion the whole time, I think it helped him snap. So I like that scene, him killing her. I just think that in terms of backstory and motive, they didn't really build it up to, on Shay's end,
right,
her sleeping with Tywin. On Tyrion's end, I thought they built it up well, but on Shay's end of she's all of a sudden a whore who's sleeping with Tywin, I didn't think that really made sense. And it wasn't like Tywin was doing that as a last stab at Tyrion to say, not only did I throw you in jail, but I'm also sleeping with your wife, your woman. Tywin didn't do that on purpose. He had no idea Tyrion was going to escape. So it wasn't like Tywin's last way of getting back at Tyrion. It just happened. So I was a little confused in the motive, but what are you going to do? That's the show. I've learned to not look into it as much.
Right.
And just take the show on face value. Which is why I know you posted out last night that this season of Game of Thrones is, the best season, one of the best seasons ever. Of an
HBO series.
Right, of an HBO series. And
I think it does track up with seasons of The Sopranos and some of the weaker seasons. It absolutely does.
Okay. Everyone has different
What's the
opinions.
weakest season of The Sopranos?
6A.
Okay, so the Vito season. You don't think season 4 of Game of Thrones comes close to those episodes with Vito and him going to Connecticut or wherever the hell he was and then sleeping with Johnny Cakes?
That's different. Yeah, if that's the
you
way
hated
you want to phrase it. if that's the way you want to phrase it, then yes, you're correct. Game of Thrones season 4 compared to Vito and Johnny Cakes, 100% Game of Thrones is better than Johnny Cakes. Johnny Cakes, but
I can go for some Johnny Cakes right now, not for for the actual food.
Yeah. Yes, I understand. But in terms of a season as a whole, not to go too much into The Sopranos, but in terms of the season as a whole, The Sopranos had a great season. Yes, those Vito scenes were not great at all, but the season, other than those Vito scenes, was fantastic. Game of Thrones had a great season too, season 4. Fantastic season. It's one of my favorite shows ever. But when you start to look into the show, when you start to poke these holes, like Shay, why was she there? Grams had nothing to do all season. When you start to look at that, when you start to look at all these different things that are going on, they're just not always adding up to the ways that if you look into Sopranos, I could poke at that all the time and it wouldn't pop. It's like a balloon. If you can poke at it, it's not going to pop. It's solid. But if you're poking at Game of Thrones, you're popping all these little holes in it, and the air's going out. So, and again, that's not to knock Game of Thrones. I still love Game of Thrones. It's still a great show. But then we start to talk about it a lot, and there are little things that aren't adding up. And as a show, they don't add up, which is why I think, even though I don't do it, the book seems like a great thing to read where you can get all these holes being filled in. And I think that's one of the negatives about the show is that the book goes into so much more depth, probably. Again, I didn't read it, but you can attest. The books probably go into so much more depth and add to it, and the show just doesn't have the time to do that. They only have 10 hours a season, which is a shame. I wish it was more, but...
I wish it was more, too, which I'm kind of surprised, because The Sopranos aired, 12 episodes in a... maybe 13 and one. It was season 1, 13 episodes?
Well, every season was 13 episodes, except for the final season, which was, I want to say 8 and 8, or...
Yeah, you gotta wonder why...
Well, it's not just Game of Thrones. It's becoming an industry-wide thing where shows have gone from 13 episodes to 12 episodes to 10 episodes. HBO's been doing this a lot. True Blood was either 12 or 13 episodes. It's down to been 10 the past 2 seasons. Boardwalk Empire, this upcoming season, 10 episodes. The Newsroom, I think, is 10 episodes. The Leftovers, that's coming up on HBO starting in 2 weeks, I believe it's going to be 10 episodes. So I think it's just a thing that they're doing just budgetarily to shrink the costs.
I will say this, that I was okay with the way that Shay died. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does Tyrion say to Tywin that Shay's still in the other room alive? Or does he say on screen that he killed her? I don't think he says on screen that he killed her. I think he alludes that she's in the other room.
I'm going to have to go back and... I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and watch.
I don't think he says that he just killed her. I'm pretty sure.
I'm going to have to go back and watch. That'll be good. That'll be good to know. But either way, Tywin was worried because he was trying to do everything he could to talk himself out of that mess. And I think it wasn't until the first bolt hit him that he realized that it was over. Because I was almost convinced. Tywin convinced me, the actor, I forget it, Charles Dance, convinced me that, as an actor, that he was serious, that he was never going to kill Tyrion. I believed it for a moment.
You think he would have sent him to Castle Black?
No. He was absolutely going to kill Tyrion. But I'm saying Charles Dance, as an actor, did such a good job of portraying Tywin Lannister as, lying to Tyrion and saying, oh, I would have never killed my own son. Of course he would have killed his own son.
We didn't get any play towards the book where it ends with, and Tywin Lannister does not really shit gold. That is how that chapter ends in the book.
I knew that before, and that's a great line, and I guess that's another reason people should go and read the books, because that's a great line.
Little humor injected by George. Were you okay with the death of Tywin and how that played out? I still feel it was a little rushed.
Yeah, well, the whole thing was rushed, but I like that. I thought that was a really a good death to die in the toilet. No one's died that well in the toilet since Gigi on The Sopranos. But he had a heart attack. He wasn't like shot with a bolt crossbow, so it was a little different. But it was. No, I liked Tywin's death a lot. I thought that was good, and Tyrion killing him on the toilet was just kind of an added humiliation to someone who has humiliated Tyrion his whole life. So it was definitely a comeuppance for Tyrion. He got his day finally on his father.
I thought it was a long time coming to see Tywin go. I know there's a lot of Tyrion fans around the world that love that moment where he grabs a crossbow and not once but twice nails Tywin where it really hurts, and down he goes to the canvas, and he's dead. And then Varys takes him back. Did you like that he puts him in a box on the and puts him on the boat, and then Varys sits on the boat? Did you like that?
Yeah, no, I love that. Everything Varys does, I love. But going back to what we were talking about before about how things aren't necessarily adding up, let me ask you this. Maybe it plays out differently in the book. But so Varys, his whole motive, his whole MO has been, I'm going to survive as a person. I don't care what happens to anyone else, but I need to survive. I need to protect myself because no one's there to protect me. I don't have a family. I don't have a wife or children. I don't have sell swords. I just have me. I have to protect myself. And that's been his whole MO this whole series. Yesterday, at the finale, he saves Tyrion. Very happy about that. But then he has to flee, I guess. He gets on the boat and he has to flee because now Tywin's dead. That just doesn't seem right to me. Like, he spent his whole life insulating himself from these incidents, and all of a sudden yesterday he frees Tyrion, puts his neck on the line, and then has to flee because of it. Does it play out differently in the book?
Not to my knowledge, no.
But do you see what I'm saying? I mean, his whole thing, his whole shtick, his whole MO has been, I'm going to protect myself. With Ned Stark, he didn't free Ned Stark. Think about how easy it could have been. There's actually a line in season 1. I forget. I don't think it was Baelor. It might have been the episode before that. It might have been Baelor, where he says, yes, I could free you, but I'm not going to do that because, I could die. Then I'd lose my life, and I don't have anyone. No one, I think the line is something like, no one looks out for spiders. It's a really good line. And then all of a sudden, so he doesn't save Ned in season 1, but then he's saving Tyrion now. It almost seems like a convenience of George. Do you see where I'm getting at, or no?
Sure, no, I understand.
What are your thoughts about that? Because he doesn't save Ned, but he saves Tyrion.
I think, just my opinion, that he didn't see Ned as the solution to all the problems that were going on in Westeros. He saw this little guy, Tyrion, as the guy that should be in charge. I think because the Lannisters had a lot of influence. Yeah, one would think, oh, well, the Spider's really trying to do it for the, quote, good of the realm. Maybe he is. I think, knowing what I know that what's to come in the role that Varys plays, there's a reason why, and I really don't want to dive too into it.
Please.
I think there's a reason why, maybe, going back to your point, why he doesn't align with the Starks, in that throne room. There are multiple reasons why he does not side with Ned and he goes with Tyrion here, and that will play into what you'll see from Varys in future seasons on the Game of Thrones HBO show, and it has played out obviously now in the books up until the last one, The Dance of Dragons, because Varys' motives, it's safe to say, are for the good of the people in King's Landing. He really is trying, even though he's just the Master of Whisperers. Really, he's not it's a big role. He has a seat on the small council, but he's not the king.
Right. We'll see. You brought up a good point I didn't think about. But if that's the case, then his motives have seriously changed. Because if you just take it as, he's the same person, he wants to survive at all costs, then I think it is character assassination to free Tyrion. But if what you're saying is that his agenda is further reaching, which I agree with. Varys' agenda is further reaching. Then I think this is a big turn, a big arc, a very big turning point for Varys.
We'll just put it this way: the book readers understand who Varys is doing all his business for.
Right, just on the show level, because I have no idea what comes next with Varys. This is a big turn for him, a huge turn for him, because literally he just basically said, I'm throwing away everything I worked for in my life. I'm throwing away
with the Lannisters.
With the Lannisters, but the Lannisters are in control now. And as he said before, it's the victors who write the history books, and they're in control. So as of now, he's throwing his entire life away because he must see something in Tyrion and say, this guy is going to fundamentally change everything and make my life better. So honestly, out of all the characters, I would say this has been the biggest thing for Varys in this episode. No characters had other than people dying. No characters had a bigger turn than Varys. Because he literally just...
Listen, I love him and Littlefinger, man. They are two. Colin Hill, is that his name? What's his name?
I think it's Coneth Hill.
Coneth Hill.
Aidan Gillian, I know, plays Littlefinger.
Talk about two wonderful actors. They are great. If only, and I think you and I talk about all the time, if they only had a little more Varys or a little more Littlefinger. I personally love Varys. Varys is one of my favorite characters on the show.
Oh, for sure. This season did have a lot of Littlefinger. I was very happy with the amount of Littlefinger that was in the season. But some of my favorite scenes of the series have been, I think it's season 1 and season 2, when Varys and Littlefinger are in the throne room with the Iron Throne and they're just talking about random things. It was so great. So I'll miss those scenes. It's a shame. Hopefully in the future somehow Littlefinger and Varys meet up again because those two are just great together. It's like peanut butter and jelly or lamb and tuna fish, whatever you want to, call it.
The yin and the yang.
Sure. The yin and the yang.
Yeah. One's a good guy and one's a bad guy. You got to guess which one's which.
Well, I don't know if they're good or bad. I wouldn't say one's good or bad. I think they each have their own agendas.
I agree. Well said.
I don't know if they can. I mean, Littlefinger might be more bad than Varys. Littlefinger, I think, might be in the more bad category, but I don't know. I don't think many of the characters would. Like, for instance, would you consider Tywin a bad guy?
Yes.
Really, I wouldn't consider Tywin a bad guy. I would say he's ruthless, but in Westeros you have to be ruthless. Joffrey was a bad guy. Joffrey tortured prostitutes and didn't care about his people. I mean, he was a bad guy for reasons, but he was still a bad guy. Tywin just did what he needed to do. The whole Red Wedding that was perpetrated by him, he said it himself. Why kill 1,000 men on a battlefield when you can kill 15 at dinner?
I want to ask you about that for a second. Let me stop you there.
Okay.
The Red Wedding happened and it went viral on YouTube with people taping the reactions of their friends, etc.
Right.
The thrilling scenes that were shot this season, in your eyes, does that put the Red Wedding aside or even the Battle of Blackwater with the stuff that went down in this season?
Wait, ask you the question. I'm not understanding. Say it again?
The scenes that took place in what I think both of us agree on the best season of the show, season 4.
Okay.
Were any of those scenes better than the Red Wedding scene that went viral over the internet?
I know I'm in the minority, but I didn't think the Red Wedding scene was good at all. At all. For the same things I've been saying, that I didn't think we had that much invested in Robb Stark or his wife. I don't even remember her name. Catelyn. What was her name?
Lady Talisa.
Okay, Lady Talisa. I didn't think we had that much.
Westerling in the book.
Okay. Well, either way, we had nothing invested in her. Robb, I didn't think we had anything invested in. Catelyn, maybe, but the Red Wedding to me meant nothing other than getting rid of 3 characters who I never cared about. And to me, I think that might be why season 4 is so good, is because we don't have 3 characters who are just dead weight. I thought almost any scene this season was better than the Red Wedding. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, in the final moments of our Google Hangout here, let me ask you this: did this episode or the Watchers of the Wall, where the battle was all at the wall, did they trump the Battle of Blackwater, which I think a lot of critics say was the best episode in the series? Or do you feel that's still on the top?
Did this episode, The Children, trump Blackwater? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, they're two very different episodes. One's an episode entirely devoted.
That's for what they're worth. I don't care if they're two different. If you were to rank your top 3 episodes of the series through 4 seasons, what would they be? 1, 2, 3, 1 being the best.
Right. Baylor would probably be on that list.
Right, which was season 1 where Ned got his
episode 9
cut off.
Poor old dead Ned. That would probably be maybe 1. No. Blackwater would be 2. This episode, maybe. If you were to say this episode is 3, this episode is 3. I don't know if I consider this episode 3. I have to think about it some more. I think it's too early to tell. We need to let it settle a bit. I mean, this was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it.
But many critics said, and I think you told me this, that a lot of critics thought that this was not the best season finale of the series, correct?
Right. A lot of critics didn't. I don't say didn't like this season. That's not what it is. It's they kind of. I mean, I guess I get a lot of my mentality from the critics, but they poked a lot of holes in this season, and that's kind of the way I feel about it. Is there were just a lot of holes to be poked, and that's that. I mean, I think they still think the acting was great. They still think Peter Dinklage had an amazing acting performance. They still think all the things we've been saying. So it's not like they thought this was a bad season. I just think that they may have liked the 3rd season better because of the Red Wedding, I guess.
Oy.
Yeah, oy. I don't know what else to.
In my eyes, the worst season.
Oh, for sure, absolutely.
What do you rate them? 4, 1, 2, 3?
Yesterday I told you I rated it 4, 1, 2, 3. It's either 4, 1, 2, ... 3, or it could be 1, 4, 2, ... 3rd season. The first season is still really good. I mean, the first season killed off. The first season built. Okay, this season had the Red Viper, who was only on the show for 1 season. Less than a season. They built him up and they killed him off. Really good job. Season 1, they were starting from scratch. They built up a lot of amazing characters and killed off at least 4 of those. Ned Stark, Viserys, Robert Baratheon, and Khal Drogo. I mean, those are iconic characters. And I don't think you could compare anyone who's on the show to those 4 characters. Maybe Tyrion, but that's really it.
If there's one character who's died that you wish was still alive in the show, who would that be?
Ned Stark?
Okay. That's what I would say, too.
Because Ned Stark, I mean, it's a shame because with no Ned Stark, there isn't really a Stark family. I mean, even when Ned Stark died and Robb took over, all the Starks were still dispersed.
Right.
So, yeah, I really wish Ned Stark was back. He was great. Sean Bean was so good at that. And that was
actor on the part, would you say, right? Or at least most recognizable for U.S. audiences.
For all audiences. I mean, he's a big guy. Lord of the Rings, National Treasure, GoldenEye. There hasn't been anything that he hasn't been in. He's huge. So.
All right. Final thoughts leading into the break, and then to next season. What are you expecting, and how could they pick off from such a high of season 4?
Right. They're definitely going overseas. Before we've only seen Daenerys over in Essos. Now we are having Varys and Tyrion. I'm assuming they're going to Essos. They're going across the narrow sea. I'm just assuming that. Maybe they're going somewhere else. Maybe they're going to the north, but I doubt it. I'm just going to assume they go overseas. I'm assuming Arya is.
You say that they're going to the Free Cities.
Okay, right, the Free Cities. Isn't that across the narrow sea?
Yeah, so they do say that.
Right. Okay.
Remember, Jaime comes into Free and says you're going to the Free Cities.
Right. No, he did say that. So right. So okay. So He's going to be over in Essos in the Free Cities. Arya heading to Bravos. She's going over there. I wouldn't be surprised if somehow Daenerys runs into one of these guys, because really Daenerys is a character who I like, but I'm starting to get a little tired of, because she really's had nothing to do over there. They're just kind of stalling her character until they can.
We said this to each other too. Just let me jump in here for a second. We talked about that her scenes were kind of wasted a little bit. I don't think they needed to be in this finale, but I feel like the writers want her in every finale for some reason. Obviously, season 3 finale ended with a song Misa that played, which was when I told you when that soundtrack came out and I heard the song, I'm like, this is definitely going to be the last song that we'll hear of that season. I didn't think we needed to see any of her problems in this finale at all. I wish they would have spent more time on the Tyrion Tywin stuff, or even maybe the Arya stuff, or maybe even the Wall as well. I think that, I agree in the respect that I think there will be a lot more scenes overseas in Essos, which will kind of be cool. And I think, as I hope a lot of non-book readers feel that it would be wonderful to see some of these characters that have never met each other and just talked about each other from many, as they call, leagues away, meet up and kind of discover one another and have interaction with each other. That would be awesome. Will that happen? I'm certainly not going to say anything now in this hangout, but needless to say, I think we'll see more stuff overseas as opposed to Westeros, which will kind of be cool, I think.
Yeah, I haven't read the books. I mean, you have, and many other people have. I've heard the next books, book 4 and 5, aren't the best. I hear book 3 is the best, and then it just teeters off after that.
They do take place, for those that don't understand Feast of Crows and Dance with Dragons, they do take place same time period. Obviously, Dance of Dragons concentrates more on the Essos side, whereas Feast of Crows talks about the stuff with the Wall, being the name Crows and stuff, on the Westeros side. But the books, as George R. R. Martin, the author, points out, are seen in the same time period, even though they're split up into 2 very large, what I would call novels, because they're 1,200 pages long, which is an eternity to read.
All right. Either way, whether or not the books were good or not, I'm very excited for next season. I'm so glad Tyrion's out of King's Landing. King's Landing has been pretty much the focus of the whole show since it started, and it's a really great place. There's so many great things going on there, but I'm glad we're going to hopefully move on from that, because the only person who's still really in King's Landing is Cersei and Jaime, I guess.
And Tommen of the House Baratheon, first of
first of his name, breaker of chains, knitter of quilts. Yeah, I understand, but he's not a main character, so, So I'm glad we're going out to these other places, and also we get to see more things on the intro map. We'll get to see more places on the intro map. Bravos is already on there, but hopefully we'll get to see some new things. That'll be exciting. I'm excited for next season. I think, like you said, we're definitely going to see a lot more of Essos.
Right.
I think we'll see a lot more of Bran's story, because it felt like things are about to get really interesting with him.
I agree with that. Like I said, I think the way they set it up with the skeletons, or the whites as they call them in the book, I think that has kind of made people a little bit more interested in what he's going to go through, which is great. I think it took a while, which maybe they could have sped that sequence up a little bit, but a really action-packed episode, and overall I give it an A. Just despite a few scenes being rushed, I give the children episode a 9 out of 10 in my eyes. I don't know what you rate it, but I thought, to me, it was the best season finale in the show. I disagree with what the critics have said. I thought, hands down, it was a heck of an episode, and will go down in my eyes as a top 5 episode in the show.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was a 9 out of 10 episode. I mean, it was a lot of fun. A lot of stuff happened. A lot of things changed. It definitely cleared the board for next season. So I'm excited. I'm excited about it. It should be a really good, future season and future show. So this was a great season, much better than season 3, big improvement. I think it's only going up from here. I mean, the numbers get bigger each year. The show's become bigger than, in terms of number-wise, in live viewing, the show has become bigger than The Sopranos. So I think it's only going to get bigger.
Well, to close it out, Josh, give the people, because you are an expert in all TV, not just the pay-per-view stuff, but also the network TV series. Give the people out there listening right now something to watch in their downtime now that Thrones isn't on, because I don't know what the heck is on. I'm only an HBO guy, so anything coming up that's interesting at all?
Anything. Are you kidding me? There's so much coming up. I mean, summer, this is actually, I think, the first, within the next couple of weeks, a lot of big stuff is coming out. 2 weeks from now, at the end of June, on HBO, so you can watch it, a show from Damon Lindelof, who is one of the creators of Lost, is coming out called The Leftovers. I haven't heard any reviews on it, but
HBO.
Yeah, that's on HBO. I think it's going to be on at 10 o'clock after True Blood. True Blood's going to have 9 o'clock, and then The Leftovers is going to have the 10 o'clock slot. And it's from one of the creators of Lost, and Lost is one of my favorite shows of all time. So that should be interesting. I don't really know what it's about. I know that it's about 2% of the world's population just magically disappears, and the people have to deal with it. So there's that coming up. That's the big show I'm looking forward to. But there's a ton of other shows, just new shows that haven't aired before that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. Tyrant on FX, which is about, I don't even know, but a tyrant, like a guy who was from a Middle Eastern family, who's a ruling family, fled to America. I guess he goes back. That's coming up. There's a show called Another Strain on FX, which is a vampire show. There's so many different shows coming up. It's going to be a really exciting summer. Game of Thrones, I'm going to be sad it's gone now.
Do you know what show I'm looking forward to this summer?
What show you are? Yeah, of course, Big Brother.
That's right. So all the Big Brother fans out there, wave the rally tails. We're getting ready.
You're the master of whispers, Dave, because that's all they do on the show is whisper.
I'll tell you, man, if I was on that show, I'd make it to the end. I'd be like Dan Gosling.
Can we start a hashtag with the one or two reviewers we have in here of hashtag Dave Leonard for BB, for Big Brother?
BB16.
BB16? I'd love to see you on Big Brother. You'd be great.
You would think I would know. I think it's...
If you think about it, though, I mean, I haven't really watched Big Brother, but all Big Brother really is kind of a reality Game of Thrones. It's people scheming against each other to kind of take power in the house. I mean, right? Or no?
To be head of household. I love it.
It's right. The head of household is basically the Iron Throne.
I like it better than Survivor, and a lot of people think I'm crazy for saying that. But, Survivor is such a franchise in itself. And I'm not really a reality TV guy, but it's just something about Big Brother that I just get hooked on. It's
like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's why I like it. Well, Josh, this was absolutely a pleasure, as always, being with you from sunny Florida here at the Wall in the Northeast, you being in Durham.
Yes.
And we will do this again, I'm sure, to kick off Season 5. We'll have to have an Essos2Westeros Google Hangout to get the crowd out there pumped up, energized, and ready to go to watch another exciting and thrilling season of Game of Thrones. Josh Miller from Florida, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, David.
And I'm Dave Leno saying so long from the friendly confines I call the Bed of Roses here in the Northeast. We wish you well and have a joyous and relaxing summer at the beach. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.